Hey miners, Mining King here. Today we're going to be looking at 7 different thermal pastes. So let's get right into it. Alright guys, so I'm going to be turning off this rig. I'm going to be unplugging all the GPUs, and then I'm just going to leave this one plugged in. Just this one. All the other ones will be shut off. I have 7 different thermal pastes that we're going to be testing, and I want to see if, brand loyalty and quality and price and all that, does it really matter when it comes to thermal paste? Could you just get away with like the cheap Amazon brand? So let's get this rig turned off. Let's get this GPU out, torn apart, and start with our first thermal paste. Alright guys, so we're back here at my studio / like computer area here, and we're going to be taking apart this Red Devil here that I got from Panda. Now this particular Red Devil, it's already been repasted, but I did say that we're going to be testing 7 different thermal pastes, and they all range, from different, types and brands and, price and all that stuff, and I want to test to see, does it really matter, or can you get away with just using a cheap Amazon brand, and is it just as good as Thermal Grizzly? So I am considering doing a long-term test, maybe against the one that does the best, and then put it against, a lot of people like Thermal Grizzly or something, or maybe I might do the top 2 and do them as like a longevity test. I don't know, not sure about it, so we'll see. But I am going to be testing 7 different thermal pastes today, and I want to see if there's any difference in temperature. So I'm going to be repasting them, putting them back in the rig, and then I'm going to be testing for about an hour. It should be heat soaked pretty good to have an accurate temperature reading. So let's start tearing this thing apart. So this is going to be the first tear down right here. Now there's not a lot to these Polaris cards. It's usually like maybe 6 screws, 4 screws sometimes, so it's usually pretty easy. And as you see, it just kind of came apart, and that's just because I've recently repasted these cards pretty recent, so it shouldn't be really crusty or stuck on there. So it should come off, everything should come out pretty nice. So let's go ahead and let's start cleaning up this thermal paste. I always start with dry Q-tips first, just to get the majority off, because if you start with alcohol first, it gets like really soupy and really messy, and you'll just really hate it. So always start with dry Q-tips first. Like I said, we have 7 different thermal pastes here, okay? So we have the G-Lid, if I can't get it, G-Lid Extreme. We have Frostbite from EVGA. We have the Cryonaut Thermal Grizzly. We also have the Noctua H1. We have the Corsair TM30. We have the Arctic MX4. And then this one I threw in here just because I never even heard of it before. It's called Fuse Ice, and it's made by some brand, and it's weird. And this is going to be the first one that we use, because this one interests me. I've never seen this before. So this stops the plunger from, moving down, obviously. But the interesting part is how it spreads. It makes it so it automatically... So here you can see it'll be flat when it comes out. So it's just a nice... So that it comes out flat, and it'll be just a nice, even just groove along the die. So this one was like the cheap Amazon brand that I found, like I never heard of before. So I wanted to see if something like this is as good as something like this, as the Thermal Grizzly, right? So I wanted to see what's going to perform better. So we're going to start with this guy first. So let's get our thermal paste on here. This straight edge here, just the plunger itself is like an awesome idea. It just went straight over the die. It was like, don't even need that little spatula thing that all the other ones come with. I don't even use that thing. You know what I mean? I like this so far as just like, how it works, not like the actual function of the thermal paste yet. So we'll see. This is gonna be the first one we're gonna test. So let's get this thing closed back up and put it back on the rig, turn it on, and we'll do an initial test on Hive to see what the temperature is when the rig first comes on and it starts mining, and then we'll check it in an hour. Now I am going to be using Kapow, and the reason we're going to be using Kapow is it's a very core intensive algorithm, right? So the temperatures are going to get pretty warm because we don't want to use Ethereum or Ethereum Classic or Ergo, right? Because that's really memory dependent. So we're not going to be using that core that much, right? So the memory or the core temperature will stay down. We want to actually burn in that core, and we want to see how well the thermal paste actually performs. If you guys are interested, I have also done a teardown of 570s and 580s. I will leave that linked. I'll leave that linked up in the card right here. If you guys want to check out that video of a teardown, how to clean a Polaris card, I got a video. If you guys are interested, they're super easy to work on. Now, part of being a GPU miner is tearing apart your GPUs and cleaning them, new thermal paste, new thermal pads. To me, that's the favorite part. That's the best part, is tearing them apart. I love it. I know some people are intimidated by it, but not me. Love it, man. So hey guys, we are here over at my Hive OS. I just got the rig up. As you can see, we have the one RX 580, and it is at about 14.29 mega hash. So it's just started to mine right now. We're at 56 Celsius on the core at about, because this is going to be off, this is about 150 watts. I'm really kind of pushing this card a little bit higher than most people normally would as far as watts. I'm really trying to test the core temperatures here, and I'm going to keep the fan value here at 65. So that way we have an even test across all of the thermal paste. That way the card is in the same ambient temperature. We have the same fan speed, the same overclocks. So we're going to come back in an hour. We're going to let this thing heat soak, and then we're going to see how much the temperature changed from this 56 Celsius to what it currently is an hour later after the initial heat soak. All right, guys, we are back, and we have been officially mining for about an hour and 1 minute. And so I was mining Auto Lycos on Ergo for the rig, but we're using just the FearoPow just because it's a really core intensive algorithm, and I don't mind Firo, and I don't really support the project. It's just for a test because I'm trying to really push the core to its limit and make sure that we're getting accurate temperature reads, and try to make this test as realistic as possible for core temperatures. We are still at the same overclocks as we were before: 65 fan, 1250 core, 875 on the millivolts, 2150 on the memory, and it has the AMD mem tweak of reference 20. So right now we have officially baked in at about 62C on the core for this core test for the Fuse Ice, which is like the Amazon no name, I never heard of brand before. So pretty impressive. I think it's doing pretty good. So I am starting a spreadsheet for this. I will leave a link down below for the spreadsheet, and I'll break it down for the starting temps, the 1 hour test, the fan speeds, the room temperature, and my overclocks I used. Let's get into the next thermal paste that I will be using on this particular test. So let me go turn off the rig, and let's go ahead and pull out the GPU again, tear it down, and get it cleaned up, and I'll show you the next thermal paste I'll be using. Alright guys, so we just got done with the Fuse Ice, which was the Amazon brand I never heard of before, and I think the test was pretty good. Pretty interesting results. I was actually expecting a lot worse. So we're going to be tearing this thing apart again, and yes, I do use a Velcro cable tie to hang it from the rack I have. So we're going to be tearing this thing apart again, and this time, you know what? Let's do something different. We did kind of the off-brand, no name that nobody's ever heard of before. Why don't we do this one, next? Let's do the big dog next. Let's just go ahead and do Thermal Grizzly and see how Thermal Grizzly does against this cheaper, no name brand I never heard of before. So let's tear apart the card and let's get it repasted and back in the rig. All right, guys. So we have officially repasted the 580 Red Devil with the Cryonaut Thermal Grizzly. So I'm going to be putting it back in the rig where I'll test it for the starting temperature when it starts mining, and then we will do a test for the 1 hour. So I will be right back. So guys, we're over here in HiveOS. I have the card back in the rig, and we are testing the Cryonaut Thermal Grizzly thermal paste. And right now, it's almost not looking that great. So right now we're at about 52C, pretty much the same temperature as the cheap Amazon brand. So I'm curious to see how this heat bakes over time. Okay, guys, we're back. It's been 1 hour on the Cryonaut Thermal Grizzly thermal paste. And you can see here, we're at 1 hour. I'll click the refresh, still at an hour. And as you can see, it's like within the margin of error. We're at 60 Celsius. So we're going to come over to our spreadsheet, and it looks like it's about 2 Celsius less than the Fuse Ice, no name, never heard of brand before. Turn off the rig and bring the 580 back in here, and we're going to disassemble it, and then we're going to try another thermal paste. All right, guys. So I have the card out of the rig now, and we're going to be trying another thermal paste. So let me get the card disassembled, and let's get the next paste on. So the next thermal paste that we're going to be checking out is actually going to be the G-Lids GC Extreme. Now, I know G-Lids makes thermal pads, and they're pretty good. So I figured, why not try this particular thermal paste and see if it works as well. I do have a lot of brands I've used before, and I wanted to get some brands that I'm not familiar with, and try to see if these perform any differently. And there's a difference in price point, and is it worth the extra money to spend on the thermal paste or not? Now, just by color, because this is a thermal paste that I've never used, this color seems very similar to Cryonaut. It looks almost identical. So maybe it's a branding thing, maybe it's made by the same company. Let me get this reassembled and hooked back up, and let's get it tested. So guys, I have the 580 back in the rig, and I am testing the G-Lid GC Extreme thermal paste. So we're starting pretty much at the same point as all the other ones, about 51C on the core. It just started mining about, a minute ago. We're going to come back in an hour and see if there's been a temperature change and see what our test results are. So I'll be right back. All right, guys, it's been an hour. We've been testing this G-Lid GC Extreme thermal paste, and the results are extremely promising, actually. As you see, we're here at 1 hour, and we are at 58C. I'll even hit the refresh here. We are still at 58C, same overclocks, fan settings. So really impressive so far. This has been the biggest change out of all the thermal paste. So let's go over to our spreadsheet here, and we're going to do 58C. Okay. Now, if we check out the ones we've tested so far, we've tested the Fuzz Ice, we've tested the Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut, and the G-Lid GC Extreme, and they all start about the same temperature when they first start the miner, but it's been declining a little bit by maybe 2C about for each thermal paste, right, that we've tested. And same room temperature, same fan speed, same overclock, same algorithm, everything. Everything's the same on the test. So this is really interesting right now that there is a 4C difference between the first thermal paste we tested and this last one here. So, all right, guys. So the next thermal paste we're going to be trying out is going to be the EVGA Frostbite 2. So let's get this card disassembled right here and get her cracked open and get her repasted. All right, guys. So I have the Red Devil all put back together, and we have the EVGA Frost 2 in there. So let me go put this in the rig, get the initial testing done on the initial temperature when it starts mining, and then we will check it in an hour and see what the temperature is. All right, I just put in the GPU, but let's go over some of our test numbers already. So we have the Fuse Ice, we have the Thermal Grizzly, the G-Lid GC Extreme. Their starting temps are, I would say, within a margin of error, but it does look like the G-Lid actually outperforms everybody right now at 58 Celsius. At the end of this video, I'll be adding the cost section here, so that way we could find the one that's actually the best for cost, and I'll also be comparing like the best overall as far as cooling performance. So we just got it mining, and it's at the same fan speed as before. I have it set to 65%, and it's already at 53C. So I do have a feeling that this particular thermal paste may not perform as well as the others, but we will see over time. So I'll be back in 1 hour, and we'll check what the temperature is and put it down in our data sheet. All right, guys. So it looks like it's right at 60 Celsius, which is, I think, pretty on par with everything that we've been doing. It's kind of in the middle of the road as far as temperature. So let's go ahead and input that data. I was actually really surprised at how well this did. As it started off at 53C, I was expecting it to be around 63, 64, somewhere in there, because as you can see, there's an 11C difference here. But on this thermal paste, there's only an 8C difference, and this thermal paste, there's only a 7C difference. So very, very interesting to see these results. So let me go turn off the rig, and let's take it apart again. Okay, guys, I got the rig off. We have the 580 right here. So let's go ahead, tear it apart, and try out our next thermal paste. This has been a really interesting test to see some of the differences in between some of these pastes, right? Because some of these actually go up as far as 10, 11C difference, you know what I mean, after the initial, heat soak, where some only go 7 or 8C. So a little side note, the EVGA Frostbite to me is extremely more messy to clean up than any of the other thermal pastes, so keep that in mind. Alright guys, we got the card clean right now, and we're going to be using the Corsair TM30. Now, I do know that the Corsair TM30 isn't their highest end stuff, but that's not really what this test is about. It's not just about the highest end. It's about, to me, it's most bang for your buck is what I'm trying to find, right? So how much cooling can we get for how cheap, right? Because, I mean, when you're talking, if you only have 10 GPUs, yeah, you could get some really good stuff and it really wouldn't matter. But let's say you had 100 GPUs to do. You're going to be buying a lot of this stuff, and you want the, best performance, for your dollar. You know what I mean? If there's only a 1C difference in something and it costs twice as much, it doesn't make sense to buy it, right? If you're on a larger farm scale, in my opinion. So a little quick note, right? During my testing. So what I've noticed is this, and this one, which I'll show you here in a minute, is the Thermal Grizzly, the G-Lid, and the Frostbite. These are probably made by the same manufacturers, if not something similar. These are all the same color, same texture, and everything to me. They seem very, very close to each other. Not that far apart. It's, in my opinion, so far. You know what I mean? So I think these are very similar from my testing and seeing the consistency in the color, because this Corsair TM30, I've noticed that this TM30 is more dark gray and is, to me, a little more runny versus some of the other ones that are a little more gummy, right? Thicker consistency. So let's get this GPU hooked back up, and let's put it back in the rig and turn it on, see what it does. Okay, guys, so we just got the miner started. It's been up for not about 2 minutes now, and the temperature is climbing pretty high. It's already at 58°C. I do not have high hopes for this thermal paste, so we'll have to see and wait for our testing. So that way we can see how well this Corsair TM30 does. So we're going to put 58°C. Well, it was 57 when I first started. We'll do 57°C as the starting point, and then we will be back in 1 hour and see how well it held up and what temperature it's at. So I'll be right back. Alright guys, it's been 1 hour. We've let this thing heat soak for an hour, so we are at 63°C. I'm actually really surprised at how well it did, because it actually, while I was watching this, it did get up to like 64, 65, and then it came back down. So maybe it needs to, like, you know, let the heat kind of work with the paste for a little bit. Not really sure. But it's been steady at 63 for quite some time now. It's been, you know, over an hour. So we're going to come over here to our thermal paste testing sheet, and we're going to put 63°C. Now, according to this sheet, this is going to be the worst performing thermal paste we've tested so far. So it looks like still the best is going to be the Glid GC Extreme. So let's go ahead and shut down the rig, and then we are going to get the card back out, and then we're going to try our next thermal paste. All right, guys, we got the card out of the rig. We're going to tear it back down, clean it, and get the next thermal paste on this. So the next thermal paste that we're going to be using is going to be the Noctua H1. This is one of my favorites. I'm hoping it's going to do pretty well. I'm going to save the Arctic MX4 for last, since that is a super popular thermal paste. So I'm going to save that one for the very end. So now that I have the thermal paste on the GPU, let's get this card back into the rig and start our testing. Alright guys, so we got the miner started, and things are not looking good for Noctua. This is quite a big difference as far as testing goes. So I just got it mining here at the 14.36 mega hash, and it's at 56 Celsius already. So we will check this in an hour, and we're going to see how well Noctua holds up. Maybe there won't be that much of a variation between the starting temperature and the operating temperature, so we're just gonna have to wait and find out, guys. I'll see you in 1 hour. Okay guys, it's been 1 hour with the Noctua, and I'm gonna hit the refresh, and as you can see, the Noctua has not broken 60°C. We're right at 59°C, so that's very good to hear that Noctua, it has a small temperature change in its operating temperature. So let me put this in our spreadsheet. So we were at 59°C. So this is a really weird one. It like started off a little on the hotter side, and then it didn't really climb up that much. So very interesting to see how these pastes actually, you know, how they actually work and things like that. So that's really cool. So let me turn the rig back off. Let's get the card back out, and let's do another test. Alright guys, so we have the 580 here, all repasted with the Arctic MX4. So let me go toss this back in the rig, and let's get this thing mining and take the initial test. Alright guys, so we've officially started mining on FearoPal. And we are at 14.32 megahash at 52C on the core. And we have the exact same overclocks as all the other rest of the thermal paste we test. So let me come back in an hour and let's see what the final temperature is. All right, guys, we're here. It's been an hour, and as you can see, it's at 60 Celsius. We have not seen a huge amount as far as variations in any of these thermal pastes. The amount is anywhere between 4 to 5C as far as temperature. So we're going to put 60 Celsius. If you stayed and watched to the end of this video, put hashtag thermal paste down in the comments down below so I know that you made it to the end. Okay, because I'm also going to add a cost here for each of these thermal pastes, and that way you guys can make a better informed decision the next time you're considering buying thermal paste. Right? So, as far as overall cooling, right, for best performance, right, and this could be considered within the margin of error, right, is going to be the G-Lid GC Extreme, which had a final temperature of 58 Celsius. So usually when you're doing tests like this, it's usually 1 to 2C is within margin of error, but there is a 5C difference between the G-Lid and the Corsair. So this may be something you might want to consider. So let me go get these prices plugged in here on this side right here, and this way we can make better informed decisions next time down the road. Okay, guys, if you made it this long, you guys are in for a real treat. I have the cost as well as how many grams of this particular paste you get in each tube, which is very interesting, right? So as you can see, they're all within around 60C, maybe varying, 1 to 3C difference, right? The most expensive by far is going to be the Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut at $17.95 for 5.5 grams. Okay, that is the most expensive one on the list as far as dollar per gram. So the cheapest one, which actually did pretty well, and it maintained the median average, is going to be the EVGA Frostbite 2. That is going to be the cheapest thermal paste that pretty much does just as good as Thermal Grizzly and does just as good as all the other ones. So guys, you don't need to sit there and drop a bunch of money on thermal paste and get well-known brands. As you can see, they're all within this margin of error. There's no reason to buy a more expensive thermal paste. Now, I don't think I'm going to do a long-term test. I mean, let me know down in the comments down below if you think I should do a long-term test. But to me, I just feel like it would be a video that you're going to wait for maybe a year or two, or who knows how long, right? Until the thermal paste wore out, right? So that could be a long time down the road. And then also, I might change algorithms and mind different things with these cards, so it'll be a really hard test. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think. This was a lot of testing. There's a lot of work that went into all this, so I hope you guys like it. I just wanted to see if there was a big difference between these cheaper thermal paste to some of these more expensive thermal paste. Like Noctua is also one of the most expensive ones, and it did well. It did better than most of the other ones, but to me, that 1 to 2C difference doesn't, to me, justify paying more money for it, right? So, anyways, guys, this is the Money King giving you the most hashes, and I'll see you next time.